Hi there. Welcome to our session today on Pandas EDS series. So if you go to our platform, Jenga e-learning. So if you go to our platform, Jenga e-learning, So the link is elearning.marshall.co.ke. So we're actually proceeding with our exploratory data analysis series. So this is actually what you're proceeding with. And this, like we had mentioned earlier, it will be our foundation course for both data science and data analytics. So over to this program, we had started by mentioning the introduction to EDS series. We talked about what is EDA and why it is very, very necessary for data scientists and data analysts. From there, we actually did some EDA tools where we mentioned about NumPy. And we said that NumPy, it is a Python library that is specifically for working with numerical data in a NumPy array. Then from there, we also did Pandas. And we said that Pandas is mainly used to create the data frames, which normally represents data in table format. Now from there, actually in Pandas, we mentioned about the Pandas series and Pandas data frames as the essential data types that we are going to use to work with structured data. Now, moving further, we talked about what we call data pre-processing. And we actually use Pandas and NumPy libraries. And with data pre-processing, we mentioned aspects like data cleaning, data wrangling, data transformation, and data aggregation. Now from there, data pre-processing actually helps us actually in fetching data from the source and pre-processing the data so that it can be used for further analysis. So we did a case study where we cleaned and pre-processed the WHO life expectancy dataset that we mined from Cargo. So on our previous lesson, we did case study of data analysis, and we did actually how you can analyze Amazon sales data. And we saw how this application, this can be applied in several e-commerce platforms here in Kenya and across Africa, mainly. So if I open the notebook here, we saw that with this kind of an analysis, different e-commerce platform and retail store can use it for to generate sell trend, to generate the best selling product, to perform what we call the customer purchasing behavior. We used it for pricing and discount, regional sales performance, and so many other applications like this. So now today we want to do our second case study, which is also very good. And this one, specifically today, we want to do global terrorism analysis. So I want us to go there and open the notes on global terrorism analysis. So here, it's a very significant analysis because you're being told that terrorism remains a significant global challenge because it affects political stability, economic growth, and public safety. So therefore, you're going to notice that data analysis can also play a crucial role in understanding terrorism trends, identifying patterns, and developing effective counter-terrorism strategies. Therefore, in this lesson, we will analyze the global terrorism data to uncover insights into the types of attack that we have, what are the targeted regions, what are the responsible groups around the world, and what is the impact of terrorism to our society today. So this is actually our objective for this analysis. So at the end of this analysis, we want to identify the global trend in terrorism attacks over time, okay? And also, we will also want to analyze the most affected regions and countries. We also want to examine common attacks and the targeted categories that we have. And also, we want to identify terrorist organizations that are responsible for major attacks, okay? And finally, we will assess the impact of terrorism on civilian population and economic sectors. So now, as usual, we have a data set that was mined from Kaggle.com. So if you want to find the link to our data set, I've actually hosted it on the link below. So it's kaggle.com/datasets, and it's already here. So if you click on this link here, it will direct you to Kaggle. And we're actually using the Global Terrorism Database, okay? So you're going to see that this is actually an open source database that includes information on terrorist attacks around the world from the year 1970 to 2017. So we want to use this data to study different terrorist networks and organizations around the world. So the database is right now maintained by researchers at the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, the START, and its headquarters is at the University of Maryland in the United States. So as you can see, we're actually working with data that is already verified and can give us better insight on how to work with these terrorist networks. So now to start us off, we just want to go through the columns that we have in this data set. So the columns that are here, so the columns, I want us to start with the columns in this data. So we have the event ID. So this is actually the unique identifier for each attack that we have. We have the date and year. So the date and year of which the attack occurred. We have the country and region, which is actually the geographical location of the attack. We have the type of an attack. So it could be bombing, assassination, hijackings. So the target type, this could be civilians. Maybe they were targeting government official or businesses. We also have the weapon type. So this type of weapon, the type of weapon that was used in the attack. We have the casualties, which is actually represents the number of people that were killed or injured in a particular attack. We also have the terrorist group. So this is actually the organization that was responsible for the attack. And this can only be if it was identified. So if it wasn't identified, then it will remain as null. And then finally, we have the motive. So the motive is actually the reason behind the attack. And if that is available, if the motive was available. So these are optional, the terrorist group and the motive. So with this data, which is very crucial, we can actually use it to generate the trend in global terrorism over time, okay? So we actually try to identify the number of terrorists. You're actually going to see that the number of terrorist attacks has fluctuated significantly over years, with notable spike during the period of political instabilities and global conflicts, okay? So we also want to generate what are the most affected countries and regions, okay? Because you're going to see that some countries experience significantly higher rates of terrorist attacks, and this could often be due to some political unrest and ideological conflicts. For example, if you talk about the Middle East, the South Asia, and some parts of Africa show some high concentration of attack, okay? Probably they are linked to some extremist group and ongoing conflict. So with this analysis, we want to identify what are these most affected regions, countries that are being affected by this terrorist attack, okay? And also proceeding, we are going to also identify some of the common attack types and the targeted groups. So for example, we are going to see some attacks like bombing and groups, targeted groups like government officials, civilians, security forces. Also in our fourth analysis, we want to identify the terrorist organization and their influence. So we have some well-known terrorist organizations such as the ISIS, the Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, and the Taliban. So we want to see what are their significant casualties. Then from there, we also finally want to see what are the casualties and the economic impact of these terrorist networks and organizations to the regions that they are actually operating to. Okay? So at the end of this analysis, we want the main reason why we are doing this kind of an analysis is to actually apply this analysis to counter terrorism strategies around the world. So agencies like here in Kenya, where we have the DCI, I think at the global stage, we have like the Interpol, can use this kind of analysis to identify the early warning system, okay? We can also use this kind of an attack to actually perform resource allocation in such a way that we'll focus on regions and sectors that are most vulnerable to attacks. We're also doing this analysis to provide public awareness campaign, basically by educating communities about warning signs and emergency response that will improve the resilience, okay? So we also want to do this attack to strengthen the intelligence networks around the world. We also want to do regional cooperation, such a way that countries can collaborate on counterterrorism initiative, intelligence sharing, and border security enhancements. And now finally, we also have the technology. We also want to introduce technology-driven surveillance in such a way that we can recommend AI-powered analysis of social media, communication networks, and financial transactions that can help detect threats before they can materialize. So finally, actually, we can say that by implementing data-driven counter-terrorism strategies, governments can improve their national security, they can protect their civilians, and reduce the social economic impact on terrorism, okay? So in conclusion, these are our main focus. We want to enhance data collection and sharing in such a way that we'll improve. We should have, to conclude, we're actually recommending that we have enhanced data collection and sharing in such a way that we are actually recommending improved global data collection to help track the evolving terrorism patterns, okay? We are also recommending that security forces and government can also invest in predictive analysis, such as machine learning models that can forecast potential attacks, locations, and patterns, okay? So we also, this kind of analysis is actually recommending to strengthen our border and cyber security, because we're going to see that many attacks are planned across the borders, and then enhanced monitoring can prevent such incidences. So we're also recommending increased international cooperation and focus also on rehabilitation and radicalization in such a way that we are addressing the root causes of extremism in helping preventing radicalization. So I want us to open the notebook that I've prepared in such a way that we want to use it to analyze the global terrorism activities around the world. So the notebook that I'm using is here. So if you click on this link here, it will open to you a Google Colab notebook that I have labeled the Global Terrorism EDA Exploratory Data Analysis. So I want us to start. So the first, these two commands here can give us now access to cargo repository. So we now have the cargo repository. So from here, we want to download some libraries and some data sets. So you want to download the cargo library, you want to download data set. We want to, using the cargo data set, we want to download a data set that is called the START UMD Global Terrorism Data. So the question is, where do you get such a link? Where do you get such a link so that you can download this data to your Colab notebook? So to get this link, if you open any Google Colab notebook like this one here, for example, the Global Terrorism Database, and you go to download, you'll always find that you can actually download this data using the Cargo Hub. And the link to the Cargo Hub is actually here. So this the link that you're provided here is what you'll actually pass here. I hope you can see the one I've passed here. And then we are now able to download this data as a zip file. So actually, we are actually getting the global terrorism data as a zip file. Okay, so it's a zip file. Using this command, you're able to get this zip file here. Now from there, we need to unzip the data. So I hope you can see it is here. Let me show you, it is here. It's actually here, the global terrorism data.zip. From here, we need to unzip the data so that we can now use it in our analysis. So to do this one, we are going to use this kind of commands in such a way that we'll import a Python library called zip file. From here, we are going to pass the path where this one is located. So if you actually right click on this one, you get the path. You will pass it here, and then we provide the read command. So we're actually reading the zip file from this path. So this is the path, we pass it here. Now from here, we are going to take that zip file and then we extract all of this content in this location here. So you're going to notice that all this location, all this information will be extracted in this part called content. And the content is this part here. And then after that one, if you run this command, you're actually going to notice that we are actually going to get the global terrorism database, this.csv file. So this is the data that you want to use in our analysis. So these two steps are very important. This one will allow you to download the data as a zip file here from cargo.com. And then from there, this will allow you to unzip the data so that now you can use it in your analysis. So we're actually going to start with importing several Python libraries that will actually assist us in our analysis. So we talked about pandas. We want to use it so that we can display this data in data frames. So we're also going to use NumPy. We are going to use Seaborn for data visualization, as well as Matplotlib. And at some point, because we are going to do some machine learning, which is later, we can also import the sklearn model. So this is mainly used to ignore some of the warnings that are being provided by Google Colab. Okay. Now from there, the link to the data, so the data that you want to use, the link to the data is actually here. So if you want to get this link here, you just have to click on this one, and then you copy the path, and then you basically need to pass the path here. Let me just pass it again. That one. So you get that this is the path to the data. So if you run it, we have the data. Now from the data, we now want to encode it, ensuring that the data is on the right format. So we pass several encoding schemes like the UTF-8, the ISO, the UTF-16, and the Latin one to ensure that every data we have here is encoded to the right format. So then after that one, we are going to pass our data. We are going to read the data in a try-catch exception. We are going to read our data as a CSV file, and then we pass the encoding. Okay. So if no error is occurred, then we break the loop. In case we get an error, we are going to get such an error. So if you run this one, we have read our data in a variable called df, and we've passed encoding here to ensure that the data is encoded to the right format. Now from there, if you actually print this variable here, because this one, if you print this variable called df, that we've read the data here, you actually find, you're going to see that this is the data we want, that we have. So we have the event ID, the year, the month, the day, the approximate date, and so on and so forth. So these are data that we have read from Kaggle.com. So then the first thing to do is to generate the information about our data set, okay, in such a way that we are being told that we are dealing with the pandas data frame. We have a total of 181,691 records, in such a way that the indexing started from index 0, which was the first attack that was recorded, all the way to 181,690, which is the last incident that was recorded. So these are the indexing. So we have a total of 135 columns. And we have several data types in such a way that we have a total of 55 columns that are float 64, 22 columns that are integers, and 58 columns that are object. Okay, so to start us off, we can actually perform descriptive statistics in such a way that we want to get a statistical summary about the data that you're dealing with right here. So if I actually add T so that I can transpose it, we are going to see that we are actually getting the count, the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, maximum, the 50th percentile, 25th percentile, 50 percentile, 75 percentile, and the minimum. So we're actually doing some statistical summary about the data that we have here. Now from there, if you run the f.column, these are our data. We get the columns. We get that we have a column called event ID, year, month, day, approximate date, and so many other columns. So there are a total of 135 columns that we have. Okay. Now from there, we want to check whether we have any I column that has an empty value. So we're going to notice that some columns had some empties. For example, the approximate date, the related date. So to do this one, we want to analyze data types of several columns. So numerical columns, we have a total of several numerical data types. So for example, we have integer 16, integer 32, integer 64, float 16, float 32, and float 64. So therefore, we wanted to generate the length of the columns, total columns that we are having numerical data. So if you run this one here, we're being told that we have a total of 77 columns that had numerical values. Okay, so we also here we're actually checking missing percentages. So this column had a total of so many empty columns, starting from here, followed by this one in that order here. Okay. So now we want to rename our columns. So we're still on data pre-processing in such a way that now we want to rename our column. For example, the I year, we want to call it year. I month, we want to call it month. I date, we want to call it day. Country text, we want to call it country. Provincial state, we just want to call it state. Regional text, we just call it the region. Attack type underscore txt, we just call it the attack type. Target one, we just call it target. And kill, we just call it killed. And wounded, we just call it wounded. Summary, we just give it a capital S here. Gname, can call it the group. Target type, .txt, just call it the target type. weapon type, we just call it whip type _txt, we call it the weapon type, and motive, we just call it the motive. So we just want to rename our columns so that now we can use appropriate columns within our data set. So if you run this data frame here again, you're going to notice that now these several columns have been renamed appropriately. For example, you have the year, the month, the day, the country, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now moving further, this data. So we want to start with the year of attacks. We want to start with the year of attacks. So we are definitely going to take our data. We group it by year dot size, and then we can reset our index count. So if I run this one here, I'll just show you here, year attacks. So if you run this one here, you want to count the number of attacks and the on each year, actually. So you want to count the number of attacks that were done on each year. So for example, in 1970, we had a total of 651 attacks. 1971, 471 attacks. So this will go all the way up to 2017, when we had a total of 10,900 attacks. Okay, I hope you can see that one. Now from there, we want to draw a word cloud. So I don't know whether this can be plotted. Plotted. Yeah, so if you plot this one actually, we are actually seeing that I think on the x-axis should have been the year. On the y-axis should have been the number of attacks. So I think this plot doesn't make sense, but we try to interpret it later. So it's actually clearly showing us that the number of attacks has been increasing over time. From there, we want to draw a word cloud in such a way that we want to pass cities that had the most significant attacks recently here. So we want to take the cities that we have, and then we draw it in a word cloud. And by doing this actually here, we're actually seeing that these are the cities that have been experiencing a lot of attacks. So for example, a city like San Salvador, we have West Bank in Palestine. We also have Santiago. We have Northern Ireland. I think there was an attack that occurred there. We have Baghdad, I think, in Iraq. So these are the cities that have been targeted in a word cloud. So a word cloud just gives you a summary of to display text in this format here. So these are the cities that have been targeted, actually targets these terrorist attacks. From there, we want to draw a line plot. So that we can display the terrorism attack trends from the year 1970, 2017. So therefore, on the x-axis, we'll pass the year. On the y-axis, we'll pass the count. And then the data will be the years of attacks that we had actually passed earlier. And the color, we can give it any color that we want. So on the X label, we have the year. On the Y label, we have the number of attacks. So therefore, then we can give it a title here. This is the title, and then we can show it. So by displaying this graph, that is what I was explaining earlier, that there has been a significant increase in the number of attacks from the year 1970 all the way to the year 2017. And we can clearly see that the number of attacks started rising from the year 2000. I think there was a point at around 1992 where the attacks were spiking high. Then there was a significant drop in the number of attacks. Then this number started rising from the year 2008, going further until around 2015, when the attacks reduced And now 2017, the attacks are here. So this is actually showing us that the number of attacks have been increasing significantly from the year 1970 all the way to the year 2017. Okay, so here we also want to see which months have experienced the most significant number of attacks. So far, so good. So which are the years that are normally experience significant attacks? So by displaying this one, you can see that the month of May is the highest, followed by the month of July. Then you go to the month of August, September, then you go to June. So the month 12, which is December, as now is actually being displayed here as the month with the lowest number of attacks. But you can see that more or less the same. They are almost close to moderate to each other here. Now from there, we also want to see the countries, the top 5 countries with the highest number of attacks. So to do this one, we're just going to take every country, we perform a value count. So a value count will perform the number of attacks. And then if you pass the head, it will give us the first 5 columns, and then we draw it in a line graph. So by displaying this one, we're actually seeing that Iraq, as per the data we have, Iraq has the highest number of attacks, followed by Pakistan, and then followed by Afghanistan, followed by India, and followed by Colombia. So these are the top 5 countries with the number, significantly higher number of attacks. And if you look at Iraq, we have a total of more than 24,000 attacks, Pakistan, and so on and so forth. Therefore, in the next analysis here, we're also trying to see which region. So if I'm talking about the region, I'm talking about the continent. So for example, we have a region of Middle East and North Africa. We have the South Asia, we have the South America, and so on and so forth. So we want to actually compare the number of regions, the number of total attacks in each region. So if you look at this one here, look at this graph here, which is actually a bar plot. It's clearly showing us that the Middle East and North Africa have the highest number of attacks, close to 50,000 attacks, total attacks. This is followed closely by South Asia, and then we go down to South America, and then now we have the Sub-Saharan Africa, then Western Europe. So clearly we are being told here that Australasia and Oceania is a continent with significant low number of attacks. And clearly also seeing that Middle East and North Africa have the highest number of terrorist attacks around the world. Now from there, we also wanted to see the number of people which were killed by year. So you want to take the year and the total number of people who are killed on each year. So we're actually going to get the year and the total number of people who are killed per year. Okay, so if you look at this one, in the year 1970, we had a total of 174 people who were killed in a terrorist attack. 171, we have a total of 173, and so on and so forth. So if you want the first 20, let's say the first 10, because dot head just display the first. So this is actually the number of attacks. So you can actually display as many as you want. So if you want the latest one, you can actually use the tail. You can actually go with the tail. So for example, sorry. So sorry for that one. I think I'm just resigning to my Gmail account. So Now you're good. So I think now you're good. Yes, now I think you're good. Sorry for that one. So I was talking about the number of attacks that are being, the number of people are being killed. So in the year 2017, we had a total of 26,445. 2016, we have 34,000 in that order. So if you want to get the latest one, you have to put the tail. The earliest one, you have to put the head. So that is actually the one. And for the similar reason, for the ones which are wounded, we have in this order here. So now we can display this one in some graphs so that we can compare between the number of people who are killed and the number of people who are wounded. If you look at the graph, we want to use some subplot. We want to use some subplot to display that one here. So you want to start with the number of people who are killed on the x-axis. It should be the first graph here. And then now we go to the number of people who are wounded on the next axis, which is actually here at index 1. So starting with the first one, we are actually displaying, we're actually plotting the number of people. So this one, so in this K, sorry, I think I was looking for that. This K here represents the number of people who are killed. So therefore, we are actually plotting that one in a bar plot, where on the X, we want to set the title, the X label, and the Y label. Then from there, this one will give it the blue color. Similarly, for those people who are wounded, we'll give it the red color. And now we can see the comparison. So we can actually see that most people in the earlier 90s, 1984 and 1997, and also 1992 had the highest number of people who were killed in a terrorist attack. Okay, in the 2000 section, I think we have the 201. We also have the 206, 207, and now from the year 2012, there has been a significant increase in the number of people who are killed in a terrorist attack. And if you can actually see it clearly here, these attacks were highest in the year 2014. So 2014 experienced attacks that killed a lot of people. It had a lot of casualties. From there, we also had 2015 and also 2016. So most of the attacks were actually experienced in the year 2014, 2015, and 2016. Okay, now from there, in the terms of the number of people who are wounded, in the year 2001, we can represent the September 11 attack in the US. We also have the year 2007, and then as usual, from the year 2013 all the way to the year 2016, we experienced a spiking number of people who are wounded in a terrorist attack. So this is actually a good insight that can be used by different security forces for their planning. From there, we also have the number of terrorist activities terrorist activity per region in each year, okay? So with this code here, we're being told here that the blue region represents the Australia and Oceania. The yellow one represents Central America and Caribbean. So this one here is the Central American Caribbean. This is actually how the terrorists has been occurring. Followed by that one, we have Western Europe, which is actually here, and so on and so forth. So this is actually visualizing the number of attacks that are being experienced per year and then per region. Okay. Now from there, we also have the top countries to be affected by these terrorist attacks. Okay. So we have the top countries to be top 10 countries, top 10 countries that are actually affected by some terrorist attacks. So for example, here, we can actually take the country, we count the number of attacks, and then we actually put a limit of 10, and then you can now visualize it in frame. So, and you can actually see that in this manner, we have Iraq, the highest, followed by Pakistan, followed by Afghanistan. We have India, we have Colombia, we have Philippines, we have Peru, El Salvador, the United Kingdom, and Turkey. So these are the top 10 countries that have significantly experienced the high number of terrorist attacks. So if you want the top 20, what you can do, I just put it here. Yes, I want the top 20 countries, just put it here, top 20. And you're going to see that from Turkey, we have Somalia, Africa, followed by Nigeria. Then we have Thailand, we have Yemen, we have Spain, Sri Lanka, the United States, Algeria, France, and Egypt. So you can clearly see that these are the top 20 countries that have been experiencing terrorist attacks with the period from the year 1970 all the way to 2017. So it's a good insight, especially in terms of budget allocation. So this country, we can actually give them priority, especially these countries in the Middle East, like the Iraq and Pakistan. Now from there, we also want to see the number of attacks per country. So we wanted to display the number of attacks per country. So what we are going to do, we're going to take the number of attacks. So we get the country, we get the value count, and then we give it an index, right? And then from there, we have the country in such a way that we get the column as the country and the attack. So then using the Plotly, which we had mentioned that Plotly normally it is used especially when you want to visualize interactive graphs, okay? So for example, with Plotly, we can draw a chair of length, which is actually something like a map, where we'll pass the country counts, the locations are the country, the location mode is the country name, the attack, then you can give it a title and give it some labels. And then if you hover, it will display the country and the number of attacks. And this is what you are being shown, okay? So for example, if you want to see the attacks that happened here, this is the most affected country, Iraq. So Iraq had a total of 24,000 attacks. Another followed closely by this one is this country called India. So you hope you can see here that the more the country is being labeled as blue, then that is actually the country that is experiencing the highest number of attacks. So we have Iraq, followed closely is this country called India, then this is Pakistan, then this is Afghanistan. So these neighbors here, this is a region that has been experiencing a lot of terrorist activity. Followed closely is this country called Myanmar. I think it's Myanmar. I think it's still part of India. Yeah, so it's still part of India. That is in the Middle East. Here in Africa, we have Nigeria, we have South Africa, we also have Somalia, we have Algeria. So those are the countries in Africa that have experienced a lot of terrorist attacks. So for example, here in Kenya, we had a total of 683, which is not a bad number, just to stay. Now from there, in terms of the Americas, the South America, let's start with the South America. So we have a country like Peru and Colombia having significantly high number of attacks. And if you go now to North America here, we have the United States experiencing a lot of attacks, the North Africa, in the North America. In Europe, I think we have the United Kingdom, specifically Ireland. We also have Spain. We also have Turkey. These are the countries in Europe that have experienced a lot of terrorist attacks. So you can see that Russia is not bad. As users, you can see the country is, they have a total of 2,194 total terrorist attacks. So moving further, we also want to now give some summary about The country with the highest number of attacks was Iraq. Here, so that is a summary that we got. The region with the maximum number of attacks was in the Middle East and North Africa. That was true. So Middle East and North Africa here, this is an area that was experiencing a lot of terrorist attacks. Then from there, the countries with the minimum attacks was these countries that are based in Western Europe. And then finally, the total number of attacks in that region was 24,636. So just to summarize our analysis, we can actually say that the Middle East and North Africa region is a significant hotspot for terrorism. Therefore, it's actually contributing to the highest number of terrorist attacks. That is a good insight that we have. So for those, the stakeholders in the security, can actually invest more on these regions. So being also told that Iraq, as per the data we have the Iraq, we have Afghanistan, and Pakistan are among the most adversely affected nations with the highest number of terrorist attacks. We're also seeing that May is the month with the highest number of terrorist attacks. It could be valuable. It could be valuable to explore it if there is any specific reason or historical event that is associated with this peak in terrorist incident during May. So it could have been the reason why in the month of May is when now we experience a lot of terrorist attacks. And also being told that bombing and explosion are the most common type of attack, types of attack of terrorist incidents. So this information can be used to focus on effort on improving security measures and intelligence to prevent such attacks. And then finally, as per the data from the year 1970 to the year 2017, we are being told that Taliban has been seen as the most active terrorist group around the world. So this is actually a very, very significant analysis that can be used by several security forces with the purpose of enhancing security, global security, providing public awareness, and also a way to actually use data-driven security measure that can be used by several security groups around the world. So thank you for this analysis. And if you want to find out more, we can actually join us. You can join us at Marshall School of IT, where we also focus on data analysis consultancies. Thank you and have a nice time. Bye-bye.